Jesus had a short 3 years with his disciples. That is an extremely short period of time. 3 years. Towards the end of that, Jesus had this to say in Matthew chapter 23. Matthew chapter 23 and verse 36, Jesus says, after he has announced certain judgments, "Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem." He's crying at this point for Jerusalem. "You who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings." That's a loving way. "And you were unwilling. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate." What house would that be? That's the temple. "For I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" That's exactly what happened when he made that triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Now, chapter 24. Jesus came out from the temple and was going away when his disciples came up to point out the temple buildings to him. Luke adds they were pointing out how beautiful the temple was. They were saying to Jesus, "This is magnificent, this house." And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down." Verse 3. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, asking him for a sign. What sign did they want? When is this going to happen? When is this going to take place? That the temple that we are in such adoration of, the temple of God, when will that be torn down? And then Jesus does this. On that Mount of Olives, he takes those disciples and he begins telling them certain parables, certain stories. And I want to look at some of those with you this morning because those were done in order to get them ready for what? His departure. And he knew he didn't have much time. So we have 10 virgins. Jesus says the kingdom is like 10 virgins. 5 of those women were wise, and 5 of them were foolish. Now, these virgins had gathered together in order to greet the bridegroom when the bridegroom comes to the wedding feast. The 5 wise virgins did what? They had their lamps because they don't know what hour he's going to come, and they have little flasks of oil, extra, backup. 5 foolish virgins. They have nothing but their lamps. And the bridegroom was delayed in coming. And they all fell asleep. It's interesting. All 10, both the wise and the foolish, they fall asleep waiting on the bridegroom. At midnight, the call goes out. Here comes the bridegroom. They pop up, and those wise virgins refill their lamps with oil. They refill their lamps, and they're lit, and they're ready to greet him. The 5 foolish virgins realize we don't have any more oil, and they go to their friends and say, please, may we have some of your oil? And they said, no, there won't be enough for us and you. You'll have to go and buy some. How are you going to do that at midnight? In Jerusalem, you're going to go to the 24-hour 7-Eleven and buy you some lamp oil? But they have no choice. They go out and seek oil. The bridegroom comes, the wise virgins have their lamps lit, and they enter into the wedding feast. They were prepared. Listen, Jesus is telling his disciples, be prepared. Be ready. Here's a story he tells when the king comes in judgment. When the king comes in judgment, he will divide the crowd. He will put the sheep on the right hand, and who goes to the left? The goats. Sheep to the right hand, and goats to the left. And to the sheep, the king says, come into my kingdom and enjoy the blessings that have been prepared for you since the beginning of time. Why do we deserve this? The sheep say. And the king says, when you saw me hungry, you fed me. When you saw me thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was sick, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you came and you visited me. They said, Lord, we never saw you in those conditions. And he says, when you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. What did they get right?
Serving others.
They were serving others. I got a call from Stephanie Chernin just this last week. Got up to 97 degrees outside. You know what she's thinking of? Denise doesn't have any air conditioning. We need to do something about that. Do they have AC?
Yes.
Is it? It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
My point is, we're looking out for each other. We see a need and we answer that need. That's a cup of cold water given. Now, what did the goats do? They turned a blind eye. The same need was there, but the goat, someone else will take care of that. Ultimately, did the goats get to enter into the kingdom? What's he telling his disciples? I'm going to keep bringing you back to the Mount of Olives. This is for those disciples. What do we need to do? We need to be prepared, and then we need to be looking for need, and we need to be answering that need all the time. Here's a story, and this is the parable, we say, of the talents. It's told in the same setting. You remember the parable of the talents? When I was young, I was a little confused because I knew what a talent was, and it didn't match up with the story. You see, that's a bear. That's a bear. And that's a bear. That's a bear. I got the same word, but I got different meanings. English language is great for that, isn't it? If he was naked, he would be a bear. He kind of is. He's a Rambo bear. But talent. What does talent mean to you and I? Talent is a God-given ability. That's what a talent is. That's not what a talent is. What did the disciples hear? What was a talent within the first century? It was a weight. It was a weight for the scales. You know what these scales are, right? You put the weight on one side and it goes down, and then you balance it out with said gold, silver, or precious item on the other side, and when it equals, you get an amount. That's the Greek word talenton. It's a talenton. It is a weight. Did not have two meanings. When the disciples heard talent, they didn't see Monty in their mind. They simply thought of a weight. How much does a talent weigh? Well, we're not exactly sure. This is where I always use these terms. Scholars say it'll be between 60 and 80 pounds. Well, now you pick. And I'm picking 75. A talent weighed 75 pounds. So before we even go into the story, I want you to hear, when you hear the word, you need to think to yourself, 75 pounds. Matthew chapter 25, beginning in verse 14. Jesus says, the kingdom, it will be like a man. We're going to see this man later. He will be the master. It will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants, and he entrusted to them his property. So he's leaving town, and he's going to take his working capital, and he's going to divide it up amongst his trusted servants. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. So the master evaluates. And he says, Carl's pretty smart. We're going to give him 5 talents. Jimmy there, we're going to give him 2 talents. I'll take the 1. You aren't just going to slide this into your pocket. It's 75 pounds. I'm carrying that 1 at a time. I'm not Jason. Jason can carry 2 talents at once. I'm carrying 1 talent at a time. But even then, I need to realize what a burden that was. 75 pounds of silver, a talenton, equal to 6,000 denarii. What do we know about the denarii? 1 was worth a day's wages. So you do the math on this, and every talenton, about 20 years worth of labor. That's a lot. That's a career for a lot of folks. Think about that. You're given 5 talents by your master. You have to haul those away 1 at a time. This is quite a trust that has been given to you. Verse 16. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. You know, the master didn't tell them what to do, did he? It says, you get 5, you get 2, he gets 1, and then he went away. He doesn't tell them, hey, you're getting half my worth here, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to go down and I want you to visit Aaron. He's trustworthy, and you need to invest in his business. No, that's not what he tells him to do. He just simply leaves town, and that individual who got 5 talents, he went at once and traded with them, made 5 talents more. So also, he who had the 2 talents, he made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Any of y'all got Robin Hood? Huh? Robin Hood is a trading app. Goes on your phone. I can sit here and I can trade thousands of dollars if I had that. All day, just pushing buttons. That's easy. I got the SEC looking out for me, the CFTC. I've got all kinds of people regulating what's happening with companies. What do these folks have? What do you have? You got 5 talents. You live in the 1st century. What can you invest in to trade? Wheat? Wheat? You're going to, okay, I'm going to take 5 talents. I'm going to buy 100 years worth of wages of wheat, and I pray to God that it doesn't rot before it gets down to Egypt. Or I sell it up in Damascus. Or that there's not a famine, because if you know anything about farming, when it's good, it's great, and when it's not, you starve. I'll invest in a caravan. There's a group coming here from Asia Minor. They're going to pass through. I'm going to take this and I'm going to buy spices, and they're going to take it on out to India and sell that, and pray to God they don't get robbed along the way. Or that a politician doesn't shut down the Strait of Hormuz and now I'm lost everything. You're not trading without risk. This is important. These disciples are being told, listen, if I give you this, there's going to be risk involved. There's no way to trade without that. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and he settled accounts with them. What does that mean? There's judgment. When you settle an account, there's judgment. Listen, those 5 foolish virgins didn't just go away. They went to the wedding feast and they knocked on the door and they said, please let us in, and there was judgment. The bridegroom said, nope, depart. The sheep and the goats, that's the classic judgment. And now the master comes back to the servants, and he's going to settle his account. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more. And he said, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, and you pray to God you hear these words one day. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. A little? It's $1 million? A little? You've been faithful over a little. I'm going to bless you with so much more. You've been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, but you didn't do as good as Carl. Is that what he said?
No.
Well done, good and faithful servant. Word for word. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. They got equal. The accolades were the same. He wasn't impressed all the more with the 5 talents than with what was he counting here? What's the master truly concerned about? The return on investment? His kingdom has so much wealth. And listen to me, I'm not talking here. His kingdom has so much wealth. 5 talents, 10 talents, does not matter. What he is concerned about is the heart of the servant. That's what he's judging. The heart of the servant. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you, now listen, I knew you to be a hard man. That's not very nice. We'll talk about that. I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. Was he afraid of the risk of the trade? Because servant number 1 and servant number 2, they were afraid. I guarantee you they were afraid. But they weren't afraid of the master. They were afraid they might lose those talents. What's the third servant afraid of? He's afraid of the master. That's who he's afraid of. And I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. Sometimes we don't know the chicken or the egg. You know those arguments? Which came first? Chicken or the egg? Here we know the answer. A talenton was a weight. A talent. It changed in meaning. And the reason it changed is because of this parable. Somewhere in the mid-ages, the meaning changed because of this parable. Why? Because the teachers were saying, hey, these are God-given abilities, and God says, you're good at preaching, and you're good at praying, and you're good at business, and you're good at, and you better take advantage of those abilities. Hey, if you can shoot a 3-pointer, you better make it into the NBA, because if God gave you that talent, you need to get really good at that talent. That's how I heard this parable. Did you hear it the same way? And if you bury the talent, if you have that spiritual ability and you bury that talent, you stand accountable before God because you didn't use the talent that He gave you. Bring it back to the disciples. What did they hear? They heard the third servant call the master hard, call the master an exploiter, someone who reaps where they don't sow. They were afraid. That third servant did not trust God. That's the key. The third servant did not trust God, and he sure enough thought, I ain't taking that risk. I'm not taking the risk. He did the conservative thing. You like that? Conserve. You save. He took it and he did what he thought was the smartest thing he could do under those circumstances. Listen, there are no banks. You're given a talent. There are no banks. Archaeological finds, all the way back in this day and age, they start digging. They find a house. They start to explore the house. You know what they often found? Under the stones in the house, buried, is a cloth with a bunch of coins in it. A jar with a bunch of coins in it. Safe. Never used. Buried. He did what he thought was the smart thing to do. And also, listen, it was smart because he knew he was a hard man. That Greek word is skleros. Skleros. That's someone who you're not going to make them happy. Literally, they're dried out hard like the crust of the ground in a famine.
That's why it wasn't nice to say.
It wasn't nice to say. You're unbending. You'll never give way. You're mean. People feel like that about God? You put me here on earth and you gave me a hard way to go. You go, oh, God wouldn't do that. You read Job? You read Job? When I started at the sheriff's office, I was a kid. I started in the jail, working in the jail. You can imagine I was raised like you, protected for the most part, never seen that type of violence, never dealt with those type of individuals, that level of criminal. I had a corporal in there. His name was Corporal Wallace. And Corporal Wallace took glee in trying to humiliate new people. You didn't want to work for Corporal Wallace because he would do everything he could to cause you to fail. Because if he could cause you to fail, what would it do for him? You ever worked for someone like that? Yes, you have. So what do? You put up walls. This goes into every one of our relationships. Your marriage goes bad, you put up walls. You have a hard time with your parents, you put up walls. You have an employer or a harsh master, you put up walls. And you protect yourself, and you definitely do this, the bare minimum. Because no matter what I do, you're not going to be happy with it anyway. That's how this servant viewed his master. Is it the truth? It doesn't matter. That's how he viewed the master. His master answered him, "You wicked." Wicked? All I did was conserve what you gave me. Why is that wicked? You wicked and slothful servant. You knew. He doesn't even, listen, the master doesn't even confront and say, look, I'm a nice guy. Everybody knows that. You know, I come across kind of mean, but once you get to know me, he does not. He says, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was mine with a little interest. Worthless, wicked, slothful,
Faithless.
reluctant. I like this. Hesitated so much that you're late, you're tardy. Well, it sounds like he's describing a teenager, doesn't it? I just realized that. You got a reluctant attitude, slothful and indolent. That's Strong's Concordance breaking down what the master is trying to say. Isaiah. I love it. God says, who will go for me? Right? Who will take the risk? Who will put it all on the line? And Isaiah says, here am I. Send me. Send me, Lord. What does the wicked, slothful servant say? He says, I knew you were hard, and I was afraid. Where'd you hear that before? What'd Adam do? Adam sins, and he realizes he sinned, and what does he do? He hides himself in the garden, and God comes into the garden in the cool of the evening and says, Adam, where are you? And Adam says, I hid because I was afraid. That's what sin does. It better put fear in you. But this servant was afraid from the distrust that he had in the master. Now judgment comes, and the master says, take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. From the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Cast that worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Same master. And these disciples are sitting on that mountainside, and they are looking at their master, and he is saying to them, listen, be prepared. You've got to trust me, and you've got to take the risk. Was it risky for them?
Yes.
They were hungry. They were thirsty. They were imprisoned. They were beaten. They were tortured. They were beheaded. That's a pretty high risk. You see, do not hear me saying health and wealth here today. That is not what this message is. Those disciples went from this point through the crucifixion and stood with that resurrected Jesus at Jerusalem and watched him ascend. They watched the master depart. Just like he said, he went away. And now we take those lessons Have you lost your trust in God? There's been times where I have. The greatest thing that we can do at that point is to confess our faults one to another and pray for one another. Why? Because we don't want to be that third servant. We don't want to be the foolish virgin, and we don't want to be the goat. We come back and we say, please forgive me of my sin. Forgive me for my lack of faith. Forgive me for my hesitation and my reluctant attitude, or my improper attitude towards you, God. That relationship breaks down, I'm going to bet it's on your behalf that it broke down, not his. All right, let's seek our Father. Yes, ma'am.
So when we're talking about the third servant, and he says slothful, I was thinking this as you're going through it, is he calls him, like Monty said, he's saying mean things about him.
Yeah.
Well, there could be an aspect of jealousy. You got what you did not sow.
Yeah.
And I don't like you. You're a hard taskmaster. So what I'm going to do is bury this. And that's the best you're getting from me. That way I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to try to figure out how to make you more money when you already have enough money and I don't like you anyway. And so I feel like in relation and using that analogy is there are times when we feel like, well, I don't like the life you gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like this situation that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like that my marriage didn't work out, or that I have issues with my kids, or that the church isn't everything that I want it to be. You start making excuses for why you are not putting your relationship with God first and why you are not working for Him. And it all has to do with other people. It has to do with the infallible instead of, the fallible instead of Christ.
Right.
And I think that that's what I'm taking from your lesson, is I need to take a look at me, because immediately I am conservative. I think, okay, so he took it and he put it because he didn't know what to do with it. That's better than wasting it. But that's not what I see now.
Right.
He's doing it in a way out of anger or even jealousy.
Right. Well, in
And
a
then using
wicked,
it
in
to
a
get
wicked
caught.
way. Right.
But we do that with God in ways that we may not be saying it, but the way that we behave towards our spouses, our children, the church, show that type of attitude. And that's what we need to be careful of.
Because we justify it.
Yes, absolutely.
And
it's not God's fault.
You know, the 5 foolish virgins can say, hey, I brought the lamp. You need to show up before midnight.
Right.
It's your fault that you delayed too long.
Monty, yes.
Yes.
I